Okay, great. I think it was already recording. Yeah, okay, we're recording.
Yeah.
So this is Brian Sullivan. I'm the chair of the Affordable Housing Trust. I'm going to call the meeting of July 15th to order. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Make sure everybody can hear me. Forrest Bell.
Here.
Brooke Moore.
Sorry, I'm here.
Penny Dye.
Here.
Brian Sullivan, I am here. Staff, when I call your name, please respond in the
Don't forget Barry Mack.
Oh, Mary, wait, let me pause, stop, go backwards and say, Mary, welcome.
Thank you.
Congratulations, and thank you for your commitment to joining us.
Thank you so much. I'm very excited to join.
Awesome. Okay, so Barry's mic checks. Steph, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Christy Ferrantella.
Here.
Dylan, I'm not going to get it. I'm sorry. I'm not even going to try. Thank you. Hands up. Vicky Marsh. I'm going to go back to members. I see Chantal Murphy joined us.
Hello.
Thank you, Chantal. And Abby is on. Wow, this is a great big meeting.
Hi.
Thank you, Abby. Toby open. Okay, so I'm going to look for an approval of the agenda, but do I have this right? You want to take something out of order, Dylan? Christy?
So we'll be taking number 7 out of order. So we'll do lease to locals, rooted renters, and then we'll do the year-round deed restriction.
Okay, so at the beginning of the meeting stage, you just want to swap those two. Okay, is there a motion to change the order of the agenda?
Motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Thank you, Brooke. A second?
Second.
Okay, I'm going to try and find everybody. Brooke Moore.
Aye.
Penny Dye.
Sorry.
Aye.
Mary Mack.
Aye.
Abby De Molina.
Aye.
Chantal Murphy.
Aye.
And Brian Sullivan's an aye. Okay, great. On the screen, Allison's iPhone. Allison, can you let us know your last name on your screen? So we've approved the agenda. Item number 3, public comments. For items not on the agenda, are there any members of the public that would make public comment? Any members of the board as a member of the public? Okay, seeing no. Oh, go ahead, Penny, you got something?
Just very quickly, there had been 2 remaining things at Wiggles Way. The paving, which is happening, the final coat is happening today and possibly into tomorrow in time for the open house, the neighborhood block party on Friday. And then the land bank closing, it's scheduled for next week. Thank you.
Is welcome, Mary Mack. Thank you for joining us. And thanks to Meg for her past service and the years of commitment that she made. With that, I'll close public comment and look for the approval of the minutes for July 1st. Review action. Are there any significant edits, changes, comments? Would anyone like to make a motion to approve them as delivered?
I'll make that motion, Brian.
Thank you, Penny. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Forrest. Vote by roll call. Forrest.
Aye.
Brooke Moore.
Aye.
Penny Dye.
Aye.
Mary Mack.
Aye.
Abby De Molina.
Aye.
Chantal Murphy.
Aye.
And Brian Sullivan's an aye. Forrest, I realize I missed you on the approval of the agenda vote. My apologies. The grid is more full today than...
Yeah, no problem at all. I didn't want to like interject, so I just let it slide.
I got it. Thank you. Announcements. Christy, do you want to do the announcements or Dylan?
Yes, I'm happy to walk us through the announcements. The first is that the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities is hosting a couple of virtual listening sessions to share your hopes for the seasonal communities designation. They've had a couple throughout the last couple of weeks, and the last one will be on July 17th, which is this Thursday at 11 o'clock a.m. The information to sign up is on our agenda. It was also on the select board's previous agendas, and it's on our website as well if you need assistance in finding the information for the call. It's very helpful for them to get the feedback from community members in terms of what you'd like to see this designation provide, or kind of any guardrails that you'd like to see put in place as they're approving these. The second announcement is that the Affordable Housing Trust will be giving its quarterly update to the select board next Wednesday, July 23rd at 5:30 p.m. Is when the meeting starts. The select board meeting is held in the public safety facility community room at 4 Fairgrounds, and there's remote participation via Zoom. The last update that's not posted on our printed agenda is that the housing department just posted a job for an administrative specialist. So if you know of anybody looking that wants to help out in the housing world, we encourage them to go to the town's website, to the careers page, and take a look at the job description. Thank you.
Thank you, Christy. Okay, so we are jumping to lease to locals now. Do I have that right? No?
We're gonna do the smart side first.
Sparks out first. Okay. So this is for the LAU application process only. This application will need an endorsement from the trust and the select board. Christy or Dylan, do you want to open before I go to anybody?
Yes, so
Okay,
just
great.
background for you, Chair. This agenda item seeks approval of a local action unit application for the proposed development at 18 through 26 Sparks Ave. The total project includes 32 housing units, in which they're proposing 8 units are restricted to families earning up to 80% of area median income. By meeting the threshold of 25% at affordable levels, the entire development qualifies for the inclusion on the town's subsidized housing inventory list. And part of this process is the application to the Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities of this local action unit. This is part of their planning board decision. In order for them to obtain their building permits, they need to have this application submitted and for all units to be eligible on the SHI list. The LAU application has been reviewed by town council and the development team, which includes Lynn Sweet, who's on this call, accepted all the recommended edits and revisions that Vicky Marks provided. Secondly, included in your packet is a draft letter requesting local preference for their tenant selection process. And although that letter is signed by the select board, I'm requesting endorsement of the Affordable Housing Trust. So for your review would be the approval of the LAU application to be executed by the chair or vice chair, the authorization for any other additional documents necessary to complete the application submission, and the endorsement of the local preference request letter. And all of these will be in front of the select board at their meeting next Wednesday, July 23rd. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Christy. Do any members of the board have any questions for Christy or the development team or Lynn Sweet?
Yeah.
Penny?
Or, just through you to Christy. Christy, are they working, this is the first time they've done an affordable housing project, is my understanding with EOHLC. They're working with a consultant to handle that end of it.
Go ahead, Christy.
Through you, Chair, I can let Dan and Kelly speak on this, but they've hired Lynn, who's been helping them with the application and process.
That's fine, thank you.
Lynn, just for the matter of identifying yourself to the public and some of your experience working on these kind of projects, can you give us just a 1-minute rundown?
Sure. Great to meet everybody. Lynn Sweet, LDS Consulting Group. Our office is in Wellesley, Massachusetts. I have close to 40 years of affordable housing experience. My company is 25 years old. Most of the work that we do is related to planning, permitting, and financing. We do a lot of 40B work. We do a lot of local action unit applications, very successfully, I would say. So we're very happy to be working with this team on this exciting project. In addition to filling out the paperwork and working with the client on the numbers in the process, we have also brought in a lottery agent specifically that is going to run the affordable lottery and work on the annual reporting. Our office will work with the town and the team to make sure that we get this all the way through the state approval process, get the regulatory agreement signed and recorded, and that they implement the lottery agreement and the reporting on an annual basis.
Lynn, at a future time, not now, I think I myself would like to learn more about the monitoring agent and kind of their process on an annual basis. That would be very helpful to us as a group to understand that moving forward, where they're located, what we expect their process to look like, etc.
Absolutely, absolutely. So just the lottery agent is the one that's going to be doing the income certifications, both in the initial lottery and yearly. And they will be reporting to the monitoring agent, which is going to be the state, and I also believe the town. So
Okay.
hopefully
Great.
that helps a little bit.
That does help. Thank you. Are there any more questions at this time from any of the members of the board? Would anyone like to take the staff recommendation of approval of the LAU? Am I going to get it right? An endorsement of the local preference letter. Go ahead, Christy, you do
I was
it.
gonna say, I can repeat, the recommendation for the motion is to approve and execute the local action unit application and execution by the chair or vice chair. Additionally, to authorize the signing of any additional documents necessary to complete the application submission and to endorse the local preference letter.
So move.
Thank you, Shanta. Was that Shanta?
Yes.
Yes. Is there a second?
And I'll second, Brian. I just want to clarify, vice chair or chair of this body or the select board?
This body.
Okay, great. Just to be clear. So that's a second from me.
Okay, so the motion has been made and seconded. Is there discussion? Penny?
Yeah, I just have a question. Can you, in very basic terms, explain what this does in terms of obligating the trust financially, if anything?
There's no financial obligation with this application endorsement or approval, and it is part of the process of them getting a building permit.
Thank you.
If the-
Yep. Yeah, I just wanted everybody to understand that.
Okay, thank you for pointing that out. With that, vote by roll call, Forrest Bell,
Aye.
Brooke Moore,
Aye.
Mary Mack,
Aye.
Penny Dye,
Aye.
Abby De Molina,
Aye.
Chantal Murphy.
Aye.
And Brian Sullivan's an aye. I think I got everybody. Raise your hand if I didn't. I think I got it. Okay. Allison's iPhone, can you please identify who you are? Being a virtual meeting, we need a full identification. I'll have to ask Dylan to take you off the meeting. Dylan, can you send the... Oh, he's not paying attention. Hey, Dylan, you got me?
Sorry.
Allison's iPhone, can you send that person a chat and see if they'll identify themselves completely or take them out of the meeting?
Sure, yeah.
Thank you. Okay, moving to now, I keep wanting to say rooted renters.
Yes, to items 7 and 8, lease to locals and rooted renters.
Great. So, Colin, thank you for joining us today. I'd like to turn over to you at this moment.
Okay, thanks, Chair Sullivan. I'm going to share my screen. And also like to welcome Mary Mack. Mary, I looked through our old correspondence from February of 2023. So we've been talking a long time and excited to see you on the other side here. So welcome.
Nice to
And one
meet
other, yeah, likewise. And one other quick announcement. Probably everybody saw the New York Times article. Lisa Locals got a plug this week, and a couple chair participants were quoted as well. So just wanted to shout out that we got some national coverage, and looking to see if that draws any attention to the program. So with that, I'm going to get into slideshow. I didn't realize there were separate agenda items, so we'll pause when renewals is over, but the Lisa Locals update is the first thing I want to talk about. And then there's another agenda item, which is not rusted roots, but rooted renters. Yeah.
Just my music genre preference from back in
Yep.
the day.
Yep. So I'll start with renewals because that's where we kind of left it last time. Direction from AHT is to kind of dive in a little deeper. So just as a little bit of a reminder of what we talked about with the idea of a step down approach, you know, we're now coming up on properties from year one that'll be approaching their third potential lease term. And so this is the chart that we looked at last time, penny per year request. I kind of put in the average per unit just to show what that would look like from a dollar standpoint. Per unit versus qualified tenant. So you can kind of see if we do decide to do this step down approach this way, we'd expect to spend about $17,000 per unit in year one, which is already spent, $8,600 per unit in year two, which is roughly about half of that. So a little bit different because some people renew, some don't. And that garnered an 80% retention rate. And now we're talking about this sort of third year, the second renewal. And our projections are that it would cost about $4,500 per unit for a 65% expected retention rate. So that one obviously could change a bit, but that's sort of where we're at. So with that, direction last time was for us to go and try to survey these property owners. I was actually able to get one of my employees to come off of vacation and send an email on the 1st, right after the meeting, to all the property owners. So this is an example of what was sent to one property owner, kind of obfuscated for personal identity. But we asked them if the 25% incentive for the third year would encourage them to renew with their tenants, kind of gave them 4 options. And so as a reminder that we had showed you there were 17 eligible properties. 2 are not actually going to be eligible for a third year because they're not going to get their second payment on their second year for 2 reasons. Was basically we couldn't get a hold of one tenant, and then another time a tenant left. So we're not going to offer a third one. So it culled it down to 15 property owners that we emailed. What's on this chart for the numbers is the lease end and lease start date. So originally we were focused just on the ones ending in the calendar year 2025, but we sent it to everybody because it's going to have ramifications into next year when hopefully this program is then brought in-house to AHT. So you kind of give you the full line of sight of what the impact would be from a retention, you know, into 25 and 26. And stop me if you have any questions anytime. I'm trying to just kind of get through all the information, but if anyone has any questions, I can pause. All right, moving on, survey results. And so we were able to reach 14 of the 15 property owners. The methodology was multiple emails in the last 7 days, phone call, voicemail, and text messages. So we got through almost all but one. And even the last one is still kind of just mulling it. It hasn't really responded to us. We don't know where. So it probably really would be the I'm not sure yet. These quotes represent the left side is sort of I'm going to do it, and the right side is I'm going to do it, and you know, here's why. So you know, we kind of validated our hypothesis, which is if you take the encouraged to renew, which is 6, and the I'm not sure yet, which is 3, out of 15 is roughly 60%. And last time when we did the survey, we had people that were in the I'm not sure, they all renewed. So we know that I'm not sure is really, I just haven't made the decision, but you know, very likely they would have said no if they weren't going to renew. And then for the 5, you know, I suspect that some will actually renew. So we're really kind of in the ballpark of the 60 to 65% range with here. The sort of thing on the right that, you know, we want to focus on is that, you know, one person called out, we do have a, you know, maximum rent increase allowed with the renewal because we don't want people to just make up the difference and pass it on to the tenant. So we had put in place last time a 5% renewal. We have that on the next slide as a recommendation. And Christy and Dylan came up with a kind of a creative solution there that we'll discuss to allow for some, you know, sort of potential allowances above 5%. But I think this gives a good snapshot into what we expected, which is not everyone's going to renew. You know, they might go back to what they're doing before. They're, you know, high costs here, you know, especially with rising insurance costs, cost of ownership. We wouldn't expect that everyone would do it without a kind of full incentive. But the idea of the step down is that it allows us to retain as many people possible. And I think, as Christy framed it up to me, we're paying for some retention, but we're never going to get to 100%. So with that, the idea that we have, and this can be up for discussion, obviously, is that we would solidify today with a motion that we would have a year 1 into year 2 renewal offered at 50% and year 2 into year 3 at 25%. So that steps down approach, and then solidifying that there's a 5% rent increase allowed. If there's substantial documentation as to why someone would like to raise it above, we could take it case by case. But we really don't want the burden to be passed on to the tenant. Obviously, tenants want housing, but they don't want to be totally rent burdened and have to pay, a 20, 30, 40% rent increase to make up the difference. So with that, that is kind of where we left it last time, is let's dig a little deeper. The direction was, let's ask the tenant, the current, year 1 property owners that are coming up on their 3rd year. And I think we validated that. So I believe I'm aligned with staff in saying the recommendation from PlaceMate and using the trust funds via Housing Nantucket through the end of this year and then into next year is this sort of step down approach for renewal. So obviously open to discussion, answer any questions you guys have.
Great, thank you, Colin. Open for discussion, Penny?
Yep. Hi. Thanks, Colin, for all of that. Just so I'm understanding, there were 22 properties that participated in the first year.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right? Yeah. And then 14 in the second year.
So far, yep.
So far. And is it accurate to say there are 36 now participating?
I guess the accurate way to think about it would be this moment in time, we had the 22 that retained at 80%. So there were 18 properties. So it'd be 18 plus 14.
That's 14. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. And then I just, I had asked for a breakdown, which you provided today to Dylan, because you had identified properties previously rented on a short-term basis as 45% of those units, let's say, because a bunch of them were single rooms, right? In that first year, and it's down to only 14% in the second year.
I'd have to pull up my stats, but I believe it's more like 60% in year 1 and right around 50% in year 2.
I had asked for a breakdown because you had short-term rentals, seasonal and monthly all lumped together. And I'm bringing this up only because I believe that the genesis for this program was to try to see if there was a market to convert short-term properties that had been rented on a short-term basis to year-round with a subsidy, and also those properties that were underutilized, right? Is that accurate?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I just, lastly, my last comment is I want to go on record saying any rent increase, if it's something like an owner has made improvements, that should absolutely not be passed on to a tenant. I have struggled with supporting the program for the simple reason that it's not in perpetuity, and the financial benefit accrues primarily to the owner, not the tenant. I do understand there's an element accruing to the tenant in that something has been provided that previously did not exist in the market. But who will be judging that rent increase request at 5% and whether or not that is justifiable? That's my last question.
That's fair, and we can talk about that. That was just something, maybe, I don't know if Christy or Dylan want to chime in on our discussion about that, but that was kind of added in by staff as a way to allow for potential, sort of large financial changes, maybe insurance increases, things where people said, I would renew, but I need to raise the rent 7% to make it work, right? And we didn't want to displace tenants over a small amount. Maybe there's a 5 to 10% range it's allowed. I hate to have that because then everyone will jump to the 10%. So that's sort of where we left it. Is 5% worked last time. We could just stick to 5% and say it doesn't go above that. No ifs, ands, or buts. That's one way to solve that, to not have to have ambiguity or edge cases. It would typically be handled in this case by, we've done this with judgment calls with Ann and Housing Nantucket to look for substantiation and then include that in the reimbursement for the or for the payment to the owner. So it would be Ann and I, and then obviously could be brought to the trust if needed.
Okay, thank you.
Other members with comments or questions? Brooke?
Yeah, I kind of have a little dilemma in my mind about the having some flexibility on the increase, because the tenant situation may also have changed and they may be more than willing to cover a small increase above the 5% rather than the alternative, which is having to move. So I think it's trying to balance the tenant's capacity, because their income may have changed enough to be able to say, well, I'd rather pay 7% more and stay, because the cost of moving and relocating far exceeds that. I understand your concern, Penny. We don't want to get in a situation where we're just inflating rents unnecessarily. But I'd like to see a mechanism where, if we can avoid someone being unhoused over a relatively small dollar amount, that they are voluntarily willing to pay. And maybe that's part of the equation, is a conversation with the tenants as part of that analysis.
Thanks, Brooke. Go ahead, Penny.
Just very quickly, in response to Brooke's comments, I feel there needs to be flexibility. It's so clear that every situation is likely to be different. So I think that inherent flexibility needs to be maintained going forward. Thank you.
My personal thoughts are that I like the 5% as the marker in the program, and then the ability to come in and ask on a case-by-case basis, so that it can be judged individually. And I think everything is a case-by-case basis. I have general hesitancy about the program as a whole, and always have, because I worry that we prop up pricing in the rental market and make things more affordable. I really appreciate, Colin, the comments that I read on the slide and the different reasons. And one jumped out to me, of being concerned for that homeowner and their affordability in owning an expensive house that they were renting. And so, it's a different and bigger conversation about the rental market and over occupancy, and how do you get to be able to cover some of these rents. I believe the program is servicing a group of people that we need to help service, and so I'm supportive of it in that sense. But I'm very hesitant about allowing the numbers to inflate, and thus I don't think our sample size of, what did we say it was, 32 units, is enough to inflate the whole market. But across other things that are happening in the year-round rental marketplaces, prices are increasing too rapidly. And if we over support them, it won't allow the free market to self-adjust. Those are my high-level thoughts. Christy?
Thank you, Chair Sullivan. So I just wanted to touch base. I'm glad to hear the feedback of providing the flexibility. And that's something, when Colin and I were reviewing the comments by homeowners, if there's proof that the costs are going up more than 5%, then there could be a conversation about allowing an increase above that. But as Colin mentioned, we didn't want somebody to just go up by 10% because the option was there. So we really wanted to leave that as a discussion point. Second, I just wanted to bring that to the attention that we do have the rent caps in place with this program, and that the tenants have to income qualify. And those are two things that we implemented for year 2 as ways to try to prevent an overinflation of the rents, and to make sure that we're serving people, although it's not in perpetuity, but serving people that are in the purview of the Affordable Housing Trust. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Christy. Other members with thoughts or comments? Mary?
I don't know how to raise my hand. I don't know why.
You just did it perfectly. That works.
Oh, I did. Well, I'm doing it,
Yeah.
situ.
I got it. I'll go old school with you. No problem.
I was just, I just say that the subsidy in my mind is primarily, and I've always thought of it like this, primarily to the tenant, because the property is affordable in that there is a rent cap, like Christy was saying, and the money, the incentive, I don't think of it as a subsidy to the owner. I think of it as an incentive. For example, if they were SDRing their property, they're not making nearly what they did make, but they're making enough to make it plausible for them to convert. That's it.
Thanks, Mary. Okay, so if, Christy, you just went off. Sorry, I need you for just a second. If I can come back to you, are you looking for an action item on just this before we jump into rooted renters?
Yeah, so through you, we would be looking for a vote to approve a third year payment. Sorry, I'm just on my phone. So it'd be for initial homes, it would be a year 3 payment of 25%. And for the homes that joined last year would be a year 2 payment at 50% of the original grant amount.
And this has no additional funding. This is all rollover funding from a previous grant that we passed on in the past. Is that correct? So it's just an extension of the program that we're voting on, not any additional funding or maintenance of the program costs. Or is there a maintenance cost
Colin
that's
has that.
inherent with adding a third year? Colin?
I can address that. It would come out of this current grant that we're rolling into through the end of the year, and then as Christy is preparing the RFP and budgets for next year's grant request, that would be incorporated as well.
Okay. Penny?
Just before we vote on this, through you, Mr. Chair, to Colin, you've used about half of the first grant from the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Do you anticipate using the other half before the next ask for the next tranche?
Our hope is to use all of the funding through the end of the year and then to sort of start clean with a new funding request through the AHT, you know, the in-house AHT program that will go out to RFP.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions, or does anybody want to make the motion as recommended by staff? Colin, can you not share your screen? I can't see everybody at the moment.
Sorry about that.
No, no worries. Okay, so I'm looking for any members of the board that are prepared to make the motion to extend the program out for the second year at 50% and a third year at 25% with the existing funding through the end of the year.
I would make that motion.
Thank you, Brooke.
I'll second.
Thank you, Abby. I got the second from Abby by roll call. Mary Mack,
Aye.
Penny Dye,
Aye.
Abby De Molina,
Aye.
Brooke Moore,
Aye.
Chantal Murphy.
Aye.
Forrest, you jumped in the top left corner, Forrest Bell,
Uh,
and Brian Sullivan's and I think I get everybody. This is really stressful. Okay. Now to rooted renters.
Okay, hello. Thank you for that. I'll go ahead and share my screen. It's the same presentation, but this is shifting into preservation program discussion. So the way we have kind of the genesis of this program is we launched Lease to Locals program in Truckee in 2020, where the company started in Truckee, California. And then there was an ask from staff to explore a preservation program. We came up with the name Rooted Renters because it offered a multi-year approach out of the gates. So you'll notice a sort of slight difference in your Lease to Locals programs. What we just voted on is that you have a multi-year approach to your Lease to Locals program. So this is all kind of up for discussion today. But imagine a world where Lease to Locals program is a one-time incentive for 1 year. And just to kind of go to the next slide, a rooted renters preservation program is meant to preserve the existing housing stock. Chair Sullivan, as you mentioned, you know, with cost of rising ownership, this is meant for existing landlords, whereas Lease to Locals is really geared at unlocking units. And I think Mary Mack suggested really well, this is an incentive for the owner to convert it and forego doing something else with it. Lease to Locals is really meant to spark the conversion. And rooted renters, you know, can and does work well in a market like Truckee side by side, because you have lots of existing landlords and lots of underutilized housing stock. And if you have funding sources to promote those programs, you can run them in parallel, which we've been doing in Truckee. So this is kind of the delineation between the two programs for us to kind of consider and discuss today. So here's a little bit of a rundown on how the Truckee program has been to date. This is a reminder of where Truckee is, in case geographically you're wondering, right? About 45 minutes from Nevada. 65% of the housing stock is empty second homes, but there are a lot of long-term rentals, and rising cost of real estate and prices have squeezed out a lot of long-term landlords and tenants. So we launched this program last July. The path to get there was we went into contract at the beginning of the year with the town of Truckee to develop the program. And we had a good pool of lease to locals, interested property owners that were not eligible because they were existing landlords. So we spent a lot of time really fine tuning the program with real life participants, people that might be interested in the program. So again, it launched in July of last year. This is a little bit of the high level of the program policies. You kind of seen these slides for lease to locals before. Property must have been in the town of Truckee city limits. They must sign a new 12-month lease agreement with qualified tenants. So they have tenants in place usually. And so they're signing a new one for multiple years going forward. Leases are subject to a rent cap by unit size and a rent increase schedule each year, which I have slides for to show. And the incentive amounts are based on the unit size, and it kind of pays out in a backloaded payment method to ensure participation. We're getting people to sign up in year one and backloading the payments. So I'll show that structure as well. At least half the household must be locally employed, and there was an income cap as well. So this is the Truckee program, and I can pause if anyone has any questions on this. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep flying through this. All right. It's a bit of an eye chart here, but look at the bottom to see the total incentive. So unlike lease to locals, which is by qualified tenant, this is really just tied to the unit size. We're trying to preserve households based on the unit size. So we use GIS to kind of verify that a studio is a studio and a one bedroom is a one bedroom. And you can kind of see that it escalates up, but we were really trying to strike a balance and actually, give a lot of money for smaller units, which are sort of the most desirable and ones we want to hold on to the most. This is again, town structure. And you can see the payment structure 15, 15, 30, 40. So the most money comes at the end of the third year because we're trying to backload it to ensure that the owner stays and doesn't get tempted to sell or, change tenants out or, do anything like that. And so this is sort of the structure. And then from a rent increase standpoint, we allowed a 7% rent increase. And we had a baseline rent cap that was well below market. So you can see as an example, a one bedroom at $1,250. That's well below what Truckee's median rent price would be for a one bedroom. But these are anchored at an AMI level, and this was voted on by town council. But we allowed, sort of realistic step ups because we knew that owners staying in this would want to increase the rent potentially. And so these are the rent increases that we did allow.
Well, Colin, what are the actual numbers of their free market rentals?
Basically, it's right around between, for a larger unit, it's about $1,500 per bedroom. Smaller units, it's about $2,000 per bedroom. So you can see these are significant discounts. The idea too was that we're trying to reach out to landlords that are likely have lower carrying costs and actually can, maybe are already renting at or near this. When they sign the new 12-month lease, they have to abide by this. So they may be lowering the rent. Oftentimes what we saw in practicality is that they were already at or below this anyway. So it sort of self-selects folks to look at this and say, can I make this work? Is this going to work for me to do for 3 years? And we're really trying to get people that are, already doing this and already doing it at this rate or below. And then in terms of results, so we had a huge response from landlords. We were actually oversubscribed for our budget in 7 minutes when launching the program in July of last year. 23 properties were preserved, 55 people were housed. For the 3-year incentive structure, we committed $500,000 in incentives. So we're just coming up on our, actually today is the 1-year anniversary of launching. So there's owners that are now getting their second check, the second 15%. And we've compiled a large wait list of property owners that really help shape the next cohort, which is launching on August 4th of this year. And town council amended the program and added an additional incentive worth an additional $500,000. So it's a total of $1 million in incentives for another 3-year period. So we're hoping to kind of double the results and have another sort of roughly 45 or somewhere between 45 and 50 properties and, close to another 100 people housed. Again, great feedback. We've recorded video testimonials from tenants that talk about how this is such a lifeline, how they've been, insecure for years, and having 3 years of kind of commitment from the owner is just such a, great use of public funds, and they're very thankful for the program. And I see a question through Chair Sullivan.
Go ahead, Forrest.
Through you, Chair, Colin, I think this looks great. I kind of like the increasing incentive over the period of time. I do have one question for you. Would current lease to locals participants be able to jump over to the rooted renters program after they've gone through the 3 years? And technically they are property owners with existing year-round locals, so they would qualify for this program?
Great question. So that was a heated debate at town council level on whether, again, sort of the genesis of the Rooted Renters program was there's a lot of landlords reaching out saying, why can't I participate in a program like Lease to Locals? I've been doing the right thing for a long time. What about me? And so the question was, do we want to have discrete buckets of funding and say, hey, if you want to participate in Lease to Locals for 1 year and beyond, we can offer a program for you. And that's, you access to fund, and it's right around $500,000 a year incentives contributed from the town. And then there'd be this other program for a different pool of candidates. But to your point, it seems like a natural thing that you might extend people and be able to get 4 years, right, from the same owner. And do we really care? So PlaceMate's point of view is that's a policy discussion that needs to happen, and that happened at the town council level, and they decided to allow a third of the funding to be held for Lease to Locals owners. So they did 2/3 for new property owners that have not accessed any funds, and 1/3 for Lease to Locals. And there was a lot of interest from Lease to Locals owner, but the big thing was, just to kind of go back to this, the rent caps were quite a bit lower, and we don't have rent caps by unit size for Lease to Locals. So it can be a maximum of $3,500 per unit. So if you had a 2-bedroom, you're renting it out at $2,800 a month, you may not be interested in this because you really have to bring your rent down. But you might look at the money and say, well, $23,000, maybe it makes sense. So we did actually have a fully subscribed budget for Lease to Locals interest, and I think the same exact percentage is carrying through for this $1 million. So we're going to restrict to 1/3 of it for Lease to Locals owners and 2/3 for new entries into the program.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions on the Truckee results? I have a slide. Next slide is kind of how could this come to life in Nantucket, and sort of talk about what that could look like.
Look.
Is this program a legal obligation that carries with property transfer?
No. We have guideline contingencies. If the property is sold, the new owner can qualify and get the ongoing payments, but there's no deed restriction on it. That's part of the idea of the backloaded, is we're hoping that the incentive structure was strong enough that someone wouldn't make that change and sell the property, and they'd be going into it eyes wide open. Just for context too, which I don't have this on a slide, but of the 23 properties, we only had 2 where the tenants at any capacity have changed out for the next year so far. And those have been like boyfriend and girlfriend broke up and they replaced it with another roommate. And there was, one other scenario where the tenants left altogether, and we allow them to replace with new tenants that sign up. We want to keep the property engaged for those 3 years. So we allow for some tenancy changes as well.
Thank you, Colin.
Okay, I'll just move on to the next slide, which is kind of how could this potentially come to life in Nantucket? So Christy had asked me to come and share this so we could have a discussion. But I think these questions are really the kind of most pertinent ones, which is what would the incentives, what would the incentives need to be? Who is the target landlord? I think this is DeForest's question. Is it Lease to Locals owners that are kind of rolling into potentially their even 4th, 5th, 6th year, looking at something like that? Who's your target tenant? What kind of income restrictions would you want to have? And then what other guardrails would you want to have in place potentially? And then I think this number 5 is a big one. We've launched Rooted Renters in one other market, which was the town of Ketchum, where Sun Valley, Idaho is. And Ketchum did Rooted Renters with a much more limited budget. And their approach was, with a very limited amount of funding, we want to reward landlords that are renting. Instead of having rent caps, they said, we're only going to pick landlords and we're going to sort it based on the best deals. So median, as you asked, Brian, the lowest below median by unit size, we're going to prioritize those ones. So they actually were only able to have enough funding for 15 properties to participate. at a lower incentive amount, but they rewarded people who were renting, at some cases, 25% of the median rental by unit size. So there's a lot of ways you could think about prioritizing. Town of Truckee did it as first come, first serve. If you want to sign up on this date, and we'll take top to bottom the people that come in, and then we, make sure you qualify. And then if you kicked out, the next person on the list comes up, or if you don't move forward, I should say. So that prioritization is a big piece of it. And the last one, how would this enforce, you hit the nail on the head here. How would this work with lease to locals? I know you guys are discussing the year-round deed restriction program. Could this be a feeder into that? Brooke, there's no legal obligation, but this could be a great way for a landlord, if this was allowed in the, year-round deed restriction program sometime in the future, kind of having the owner sort of sell it to the potential renter, right? There could be a really interesting approach. And the city of Ketchum and the town of Truckee both have deed restriction programs, and they see this as great feeders for those programs. So the, sort of ladder of unlocking, preserving, and then in perpetuity, right? So there's a really interesting potential play here that is worth exploring. And before I get to other considerations, I see Penny with her hand up.
No, thank you. Through Chairman Sullivan to you, Colin. Will this be, I know lease to locals is for only newly created year-round rentals that meet certain criteria. What about already existing ones? Would this apply to already existing rentals?
Yeah, the idea for the program is that we want to gear this towards people that are already renting. So, existing landlords with an existing tenancy, and then having them sort of lock it in going forward for 3 more years.
So this is, in my opinion, a lot more widespread than we are recognizing here. And I think it needs to be recognized. Thank you.
Thanks, Penny. Colin, in either of the other communities, are there tax abatement opportunities for year-round renting or year-round renting discounted rates? I know that we're investigating that here and that the state does allow it. We've got a little more work to understand, I think, through the DOR, who can qualify.
Yeah, and that was your challenge to me last time, which we did put on the key consideration. So the only community that we operate in that has a significant tax abatement program is the town of Provincetown. And so they're a good model to look at for the state of Massachusetts. In Truckee, I would say essentially there is a tax abatement program called Prop 13, which is a initiative where that your property taxes are locked in at the time of sale, and they can only increase at inflation. So it's roughly 2%. And so a lot of the landlords that we're looking at we pull up the stats on the program, and we, look at their property, and they, own it outright, and their property taxes have been locked in since they bought the property in 1987, essentially. And so their property taxes are, 10% of what the market rate would be if the property turned over. So in some respect, there is a tax abatement already sort of applied for long-time ownership, but we have no mechanism. California doesn't have another mechanism for tax abatement that I'm aware of, or we haven't explored it at the town level. Idaho, I don't believe has that as an option, but I don't know. It hasn't been brought up by staff as something that they could explore. But I do, down here is the last one, great consideration for how this could be modeled. And Provincetown did use it as a lease to locals, as a tie-in to lease to locals. So once you completed your first year of lease to locals, you're then eligible for their good landlord year-round eligible tax abatement. And so that actually was part of their strategy on their renewal strategy, was we can reduce the new renewals for lease to locals because we know that they're now eligible for a tax abatement.
Okay, cool.
And then I think the other considerations that have been floated, obviously, so the first one, conducting a long-term rental survey. This is what we did in the town of Truckee. So that would be our recommendation, that if you wanted to explore this, that, we do have a good sample set of, I don't actually know the number off the top of my head, but I could pull it if I stop sharing my screen. We have owners that have already reached out to us asking, can they participate in lease to locals in Nantucket? And we say, you can't because you're an existing landlord. So, we could conduct a survey or have a broader survey, Penny, to your point, kind of island wide. There are a lot of long-term landlords on the island. And thinking about ways in which we could, get their feedback and garner shaping this program could be really helpful. And the next one, Brian, you mentioned the long-term rental registration program, which really got the gear spinning for me. It's something I've felt would be a really great addition to a rooted renters program. So long-term rental registrations often include a fee. But I imagine that, you know, if we're trying to get the highest participation rate of long-term rental registration, having it kind of reversed where we want you to register because we have a program where we'll pay you to be a long-term rental landlord. So add a carrot to the rental registration and maybe build something a little more robust that, you know, casts a wide net, says, tell us about what you're doing currently. And if you fit the criteria, then we can offer you a program. And could be an interesting way to do that in conjunction with a program, a preservation program.
Great. Thank you, Colin. Tracy, you have a question?
Share some information. I think some of you may know that I have rental properties. I manage them for the benefit of my parents. And I have a lot of considerations I consider when I do that. We have historically kept our rents very, very low, and we don't have a mortgage. But, as maintenance costs increase and things like that, it becomes a little bit more difficult to manage keeping the rent lower. We have a duplex. Each one is 2-bedroom, 1.5 bath, and they're at $2,500 a month. We don't income qualify them. One of my tenants has been there 25 years. But the things that I consider when I consider this benefit to my parents are tax relief things. They pay taxes on the income, rather than a subsidy. I think we would consider a tax exemption of some sort, like as if it was a donation. So that value of it being a donation that they could then, have as a write-off would be a consideration that we would think about. And I think also in Brooke's comments to retaining the ability to purchase it, I'm reluctant at this time to put any kind of deed restriction on it because it's for their benefit, possibly to pay for their care if necessary. But maybe a right of first refusal might be something that we would consider. And I don't know how many other people are like us that are in a situation where, they don't have a mortgage and they keep their rents low and they're thinking of it more about tax, weighing tax consequences against, higher rents or anything like that. But I'm reluctant to raise our rents for that reason, because we just then end up paying taxes on the difference. That's it. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Tracy. Brooke, can I make a comment on Tracy's before you start a new thread? So some time ago, Colin, I was interacting with Nantucket Education Trust, and trying to come up with a concept on finding more teacher housing in the off season. And one of the recommendations at the time is these are not year-round leases, but there are empty seasonal homeowner opportunities where something like Tracy said, if there was a donation opportunity of the value of rent for 9 months of a rental, it really, the program would need somebody to monitor it. But if you had a 2-bedroom guest house that you could rent in the off season, what could the donation be to keep the rent affordable? Because that person may not be motivated by the dollars, but more the community impact and the value of the donation. And so I'll just throw that idea out there to you and then move to Brooke.
So first I'll react to Brian's comment. Teachers teach for 10 months, not 9 months. And there's already a problem of winter rentals not being long enough and teachers being unhoused early and late in the school season. So I just want to put that on the record. My question through you to Colin is, when we talk about a rental registry for longer term rentals, where is that housed in the Provincetown government? Do you have an answer? I mean, I can research this, but do you have a quick answer to that? Like, what department manages that?
Yeah, the housing department. Mackenzie is the name of the, I'm blanking on her last name, maybe Jones. So they manage the rental registration program in-house in the housing department.
It's
Thanks, that's all.
What's that, Christy?
I'm sorry?
It's Mackenzie Perry.
Perry, sorry.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. I was just curious. Thank you.
Okay, back to you, Colin. I think questions are cleared at the moment.
Yeah, and I think I can kick it to Christy because she asked me to come sort of share Truckee. I think I shared a little bit about the Ketchum program as well, and so you know would love to kind of let her sum up what potential next steps could look like.
Chrissy, I'll come to you and then I have a follow-up for you, Colin.
Sure.
Okay. So I just first wanted to kind of recap. This has been in discussions for the last couple of months as we've been talking through lease to locals, and kind of what Brian Sullivan and I always talk about is we have these three pillars that the Affordable Housing Trust is looking at. We want to convert underutilized housing, we want to conserve the already existing affordable housing, and then we have to construct when we need to construct. But we all recognize that we can't build our way out of this crisis. And I think lease to locals deals with that conversion aspect, and some sort of rooted renters program addresses the conservation of existing already affordable housing, people who, as they say, are already doing the right thing. So the staff recommendation for this, if the trust was interested, is to put out a scope of work to hire a firm to help us do some preliminary community outreach so we can figure out what would this program look like for the Nantucket community, how would it work in terms of program guidelines, and what would the incentive structure look like in Nantucket's housing landscape, and then be able to report the findings from a local survey back to the trust, and be able to create a kind of long-term rental stability program that would encourage people to rent on a multi-year basis. So that's the motion I'm looking for, but I know Brian has another comment before you discuss.
No, let's run with that motion. Does any member like to make the motion? Brooke, you just came off mic.
Says I love making motions. It's my thing. I would love to make that motion. I would also add an analysis of what staffing requirements would be needed to manage the program so that we plan for that as well.
Great. Thank
I
you, Brooke.
love to second Brooke's motion, so I'll second it.
Great. Getting things done through motions. I love that. Okay, a vote by any discussion. Seeing none, a vote by roll call. Penny Dye,
Aye.
Brooke Moore,
Aye.
Boris Bell,
Aye.
Abby De Molina,
Aye.
Mary Mack,
Aye.
Chantal Murphy. And Brian Sullivan's an aye. So I think, Chantal, you there?
Yes,
Okay, I'll
I'm
pass.
sorry, Paul froze. Aye.
Okay, great, perfect, thank you. With that, Colin, I hear you talking about the other communities that you're involved in, and this is not the right time of year for Nantucket, and dead of winter is not the right time of year for your other communities, but there may be an interesting group conversation to be had, organized through you in these various communities, because we're all working on similar problems. And so I don't know if there was a, November symposium opportunity or something that could be interesting to explore. Because I'd love to hear some of the on the ground stuff before they get busy and we're not busy.
Yeah, there are, sort of like we're going to Mountain Towns 2030. You guys wouldn't be interested. There's no mountains on Nantucket, right? That's happening in November or in October in Breckenridge. So we are attending regional, the One Cape and, other conferences. So certainly there is momentum building in the Cape Cod and Islands communities around housing programs like the ones we're administering. But I hear you, Brian. Certainly the town of Truckee and Ketchum would be more than welcome to, I think, come and share. That could be, it's summer, they love the opportunities to talk about successes and kind of broaden their reach. And so, as you know, your deed restriction program was modeled off of Vales and Deed, and they came, I think, and talked to you guys, George Ruther, maybe back in the day. So I can put that out there and ask if they would like to come and share, if that's a request
Even
that
just
you're making.
Yeah, even just a Zoom.
Yeah, or if you'd prefer it to be at the full AHT, or would it be a subset, or what's the request?
I don't have anything specific.
Okay.
I just recognize that we're all modeling programs near and like each other, and so it'd be nice to hear, spend an hour and a half live together having an interesting conversation about roadblocks, objections, successes, what's worked.
Makes sense.
Okay, with that, are we all done with Colin? We're all done with Colin. Yes.
Thank you. Great motions. Appreciate your time. I'm sure I'll see you again soon.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Bye all.
Okay. So where are we now? Year-round deed restriction pilot program discussion. Are you ready? Christy?
Yes, thank you. And we have Judy Barrett online. So switching gears, all about retention today. So the year-round deed restriction pilot program. Staff is excited to announce that this is moving forward after a period of delay. We were waiting originally after the seasonal communities designation was awarded to understand how year-round deed restrictions framework would be. Service keeps cutting out. And although we're waiting for final guidance from the state, we recommended moving forward with this pilot program to maintain the momentum in the community. Staff issued a request for quotes for a monitoring agency, and this has been awarded to Housing Nantucket. The contract approval is scheduled for July 23rd at the select board meeting. And subject to approval, Housing Nantucket will play a key role in launching the program. They'll assist with the application intake and review, income qualifications, and overseeing the long-term monitoring and compliance. So included in your packet, we dusted off the program guidelines that were created in September of last year. And Vicki, Judy, and I have made a number of minor updates, and we're looking for your endorsement to formally release the application to the public. Before we walk through the program guidelines, I just wanted to kind of make it clear to the public that the application process would be going through the finance department, and it's in accordance with our public procurement law. What we're doing is trying to format this to be as easy as possible for the user while staying in line with public procurement law. So we keep calling it an RFP, but we wanted it to be more discussed as an application that would be going through the finance department. And so we're still working on that aspect of it. Also included in your packet is the draft deed rider that was prepared by Vicki Marsh. And this includes both the year-round occupancy requirement and the affordable housing restriction on the deed. This is the same one that we use at 8 and 10 Honeysuckle. We purchased both year-round and affordable restrictions on those units last year. So while we move forward with this, we want to be very clear that this pilot program would include both a year-round occupancy and an affordability restriction. So what we're going to do is walk through the guidelines, and if the trust wants to move forward in approving those, and then authorize staff to begin accepting applications once we've kind of signed and inked the contract with Housing Nantucket.
Christy, I think it's this is great. Thank you. I'm excited to be here having this conversation. I just want to point out that you did say it was a pilot program, and it does have a limited amount of funding. And if I remember correctly, that was $2 million. And so once that expires, we'll have to revisit. So applicants who are interested and who do qualify, we have a deadline on the money at the moment. So any other questions? Come back to you, Christy.
Perfect. So yes, just to confirm, there is the $2 million budget for the pilot program. So I'm just going to go through the pilot program. Give me 1 second.
So I heard an idea today that while you're looking for that, I'm giving you the second, that I would come to Vicki, that now's not the time to change anything, but the idea would be, is there an opportunity for rights of first refusal for either municipality or the trust if the property were to transfer. So the restriction would stay on in perpetuity, that it's year round, but is there an opportunity if the ownership were to change, that the trust or the municipality could have a right of first refusal if it was in need of acquiring property for a certain period of time and or chose to buy them down even more inexpensively? So again, it's not time to change the pilot program, but I want to put that idea out there for the future program. And have you thinking of a restriction,
Oh.
Vicky?
Yeah, so in terms of, well, both of these restrictions are in perpetuity, okay? So the affordable housing restriction has set maximum resale values. I mean, there's a lot of restrictions that go with it. And it's not as simple as just being able to have a right of first refusal. We would have to agree to abide by the restrictions that are on there as far as the affordability levels.
I think my thought is more for the
think,
future
you know,
program where we take out affordability and we're looking at a broader market.
So the problem with that, and Christy and I have talked about this a little bit, is that if the trust is the one that is funding this program, we would need to be able to gear it for either affordable or attainable housing, up to 240%. Can't just open it up to, you know, any level of affordability. And so that's why we sort of set in certain parameters in this, even in these program guidelines, the pilot program, because of the fact that we're bound by that. Now, that being said, Christy and I have also talked about the fact that, interestingly enough, my firm represents Provincetown, and I looked at their existing. They have a year-round restriction program, and it's called the Year-Round Restriction Market Rate Trust. So it's not an affordable housing trust, it's a market rate trust. And so they use their money for rentals for market rates or ownership for market. And so now what will be interesting to see, and I don't know the answer to this yet, is with these seasonal community designations, if the requirement by the state is that you need to have an affordable housing trust, what will they do with their year-round trust? I believe that they are going to have a second trust, but I can't address that definitively. So that would be an interest, you know, that's interesting from their perspective to see how you could use that here. Maybe perhaps you decide that you want to create, the town wants to create a market rate trust and not just have an affordable housing trust. But then it raises a whole slew of issues of the funding for that. Is it going to compete with what we really have a need for, which is affordable housing? You know, so there's a lot of issues, I think, Brian, that would need to be considered. But I think at least this program is giving you a start to develop some kind of year-round restriction program and see how it works.
Right. Yeah, I think we're all waiting on the edge of our seats to see what comes out of seasonal communities and the opportunities it creates.
Yeah, I think that's, yeah, I think that is a kind of a big issue right now, to see what parameters they set.
Okay,
Perfect.
back
So
to you, Christy.
figured out our IT. So Dylan's going to share the pilot program so you can see the changes that we're recommending. So the first thing is we just want to make sure that it's very clear that there is both a year-round occupancy and an affordability restriction. And so the program, just that first sentence, wants to make sure that the income levels are met the affordability restrictions up to 240% of AMI. Sully, do you want to just do thumbs up or do you want to vote on each one? Okay. Got some thumbs up on that change. Okay, so we'll move on to the second page. This is where the eligible participants. There was a few meetings last summer. We went back and forth as to if businesses would be allowed to participate in this pilot program. And in looking back at the minutes and review, there would be one meeting where we'd say, yes, we want businesses to participate. Then the next meeting, we'd say, no, we have limited funds. Then the next meeting, we'd say, well, what if an employer wants to help? And we really, after staff talked about this and Vicki and I went through this and Judy, we really feel like this is a pilot program. We need to get something out the door and we have this limited amount of funds that we really want this to go in the hands of the people. So we wanted to remove the option for a Nantucket employer to be able to participate in this program and to have it just be a program where individuals can apply. And I'm happy to take any comments or thumbs up. Getting thumbs up. Okay, so we will be removing that. Other notes are just minor changes to wording. So now we're going to come down to page 3. And that is, again, where we're going to remove the Nantucket employer, the definition of that. So that's taking that out. In the deed restriction portion, we again wanted to highlight that this is both a year-round housing deed restriction and an affordable housing restriction. So we just want to put that in a couple more places.
Hang on, Christy, Penny.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair, to Christy. I really think wherever we make a reference to deed restriction, you know, we all know what that means, but I think you need to add the words in perpetuity.
Okay.
Thank you. Oh, you do, underneath that it says term of restriction you have is perpetual. I just think you can't, you know, it'll save some winnowing down.
Perfect. Okay, so in the term of the restriction, there was a sentence that eligible participants would recertify as an eligible participant annually, and that's actually taken care of on the feature page. So we just removed it from this line to remove any confusion. And then we'll be updating the income levels for 2025. And if Dylan could scroll. And keep scrolling. Okay. That's just a minor update, adding in 2025 numbers.
Suppression.
And then the payment, we just added in that an independent appraisal would need to value the home. And we just add that the future resale that a wait list of eligible participants would be maintained by the program administrator, not the Affordable Housing Trust. And then all the other edits are minor text edits. So I'm going to have Dylan stop sharing the screen, and I just walked through the changes and didn't know if there was any comments from the board on those changes or any questions about the program.
Brooke.
So the having to income qualify every year, does that apply? So I'm trying to imagine who this is targeted to. So is it I guess I'm at a loss for words. So when someone buys a covenant house, right, they qualify at 150% AMI when they purchase the house. And then they are not required to stay under the 150% AMI forever. as a homeowner.
Correct.
Help me understand how those two intersect. Maybe I just missed something.
Yep, no, this has been a big question for staff as we're reviewing this program. So the time of the entry is when the income qualification would happen. And so that's when the initial transaction, when the deed restriction is being placed. So there's 2 points of entry. One is an existing homeowner who wants to put the deed restriction on and stay living in their house. And they would need to income qualify. To be clear, there would not be an asset limit like there typically is because they own the house, but it would restrict the resale. And so what they would be certifying every year is the occupancy, that they're living there 10 months out of 12 and not short-term renting, but there would be no income verification again. The second point of entry would be somebody looking to buy a home and put a deed restriction on, and quote, to use these as down payment assistance funds. And they would be income qualified as participants that are purchasing the house. And then each year they would certify the annual occupancy and not the income. The one thing that Vicki and I have discussed is if it's rented year round, that the tenants would need to income qualify every year. Does that help answer what I think you were trying to ask?
It
Any-
does, and my
Oh, sorry.
comment would be that renters should income qualify
Yeah.
on an ongoing basis.
Benny?
Yeah, if I could ask through you, Christy, could you just throw it back up on the screen? You moved kind of fast. There was a page I had a question about. I don't know which number it was, maybe page. It's the one where we referred to median price.
Dylan, can you put that page back up?
So go further back up, please. Whoops. It wasn't 1, it wasn't 2. Okay, slow down. Wasn't there. Here it is. Okay. Income limits, the first paragraph, income limits at 240% AMI. The maximum affordable purchase price for single family dwelling. Where did that gray part come from? Because that's not accurate on Nantucket.
So that needs to be recalculated, the max sales price. That was the 2024 numbers.
Okay, but when you say the maximum affordable purchase price, this is a fabricated number that we're going to come up with, right? Based on what?
So this is based on the EOHLC pricing model. And Judy, if you want to chime in, this is based on many factors, including interest rate, the
Yep.
median income
Term-
price.
Term of the mortgage, interest rate, income.
So there's a
down
formula.
payment. There's a
Yeah.
formula. We actually have a pretty good system for this.
Okay, it'd be helpful, not this minute, but at some point to know what that is.
Sure.
Okay, good. Thank you. That was my question. Thanks.
I have a couple of questions. For the public to understand, what would be the timeline of applying to the finance committee to get through the process that somebody may be
I think we
Is it
lost
just
that.
Brian, you're frozen, or whoever.
okay?
He's
Oh,
back.
am I back?
You're
Mhm.
back.
Sorry. Where did I get lost? Oh, for the general public to understand, what would be the timeline? Did you guys hear that question? From the application to the finance committee to then the restriction going on and or them receiving funds?
Okay, so I don't want to overpromise or underdeliver. I think we won't really know until we do one. The process will be for them to submit the application. We'll need to go through the application and verify. And at some point, we might need to do an independent appraisal, and that might take a couple of weeks. And then we'll need the lawyers to be involved in reviewing the deed restriction. But so that process may take a couple of weeks to get it all moved through.
Okay, so we're looking at multiple months, I would say, and then Vicky, I want to come to you because you have something, but are registered properties going to be an issue in filing this restriction at land court?
So, well, I was going to say, first of all, I think it's going to take a little bit longer than what Chris, we hadn't really tried to put out a firm timeline on this, but we're going to need to do a title search because we're going to be putting on a restriction that we want to make sure we're going to be sitting in the proper place to make sure that we're ahead of any mortgages that the current property may have on it. So there's title, there's the documentation of the restriction in time for review. There's a lender, if there is a current mortgage on there, that it's going to have to agree to a subordination. So there's a number of steps from a legal perspective. And then if the land is registered, we're just going to have to make sure that the year-round deed restriction meets the requirements of the registry district of the land court. And I would see no reason why it wouldn't, due to the fact that they've already accepted the form deed rider that I had drafted. And also, it certainly meets the requirements of the state. I mean, it's a valid restriction. It's, so I wouldn't see any reason that they wouldn't take it. But we can certainly get their review and approval before we even try.
So it's probably, I recognize these various steps in this process, so it's probably a 3 to 6 month kind of window to be able to cover all of these details in a complicated situation. I just want to put that out there. The other question that I have,
I think so.
the other question that I have that I expect to come up quickly is how the money that's received, how is that money received? In the sense, not how they get the actual dollars, but in a tax thoughtfulness for the person receiving the money. Is this a distribution of the equity in their house? Is it a long-term capital gain payment? Is it regular income that they then have a tax liability at the end of the year? And then is the value difference in the house after they accept the restriction? Is there any, call it bargain sale or deductible value in that to them? I know this is a super complicated question, but it's going to come up fast and early. Vicky?
So my response would be that we do not give tax advice to anyone. These are things that are really complicated. And I would not want to even try to provide information on this. I think that they really need to seek their own tax advisor's counsel as to how best to handle it. Because you get into a very dangerous place if you start giving advice on the tax implications of it. I mean, we certainly understand what a bargain sale is. We certainly understand what a charitable contribution is, but this could be above and beyond that. And I certainly wouldn't want to have us in the position to give an opinion on it.
Yep. The point that I'm making is that it is a complicated situation when it comes to the dollars, and people are going to have to do that in a educated, eyes wide open process. And it's out there. Brooke, to you.
So my question is, so the scenario we described just now felt more like a preservation of a property, right? Existing owner getting selling a deed restriction to us in a sense. On an acquisition scenario where it's down payment assistance, does one apply when they're looking for a home? And is there a window in which the money is held for them? Or do they come and apply upon securing or identifying a property to purchase, having a purchase and sale agreement? Like, have we imagined what that scenario is for someone who's buying a house and needs these funds in order to afford it and are willing to exchange it for a deed restriction?
So with Housing Nantucket being our monitoring agency, my recommendation would be for them to do the process of getting income qualified, so that once they have a property identified, then the process could move forward a little bit faster, that they already have part of that approval out of the way.
If I may, Brian?
Yes, please, Brooke.
And it seems from the description Vicky said, right, that you're doing it in advance of securing a mortgage. So you've already sort of, their mortgage bank would already know that they need to be in second position to the deed restriction. And obviously the local banks are used to this with the covenant program. So it seems a little less complex for a new acquisition than a property that may have other encumbrances and so forth. So, okay. It is not going to be easy and simple, but I think it's a really valuable program, and I'm extremely excited that we're here. And I know of a few people who have been waiting desperately for this, and will be able, if they qualify, will be able to stay on Nantucket when they cannot otherwise long term. So I think it's really cool we're here. Thank you for all the work that's gone into this.
I echo Brooke's comments. Vicky, back to you.
So I just, in response to Brooke's comments, I think going forward, initially it is a little difficult because this program is really, not many other communities have this type of program going on. But I think going forward, I think we're going to see a little bit more of that happening around the state. We have filed, the town has filed a special legislation that had a year-round restriction that did not get through the legislature due to time constraints in the legislature. But I would hope that we continue to get that, try to seek that approval. And I think what you will see also is a definition of a year-round restriction actually also getting through the legislature. I know that there were some Cape towns that had also tried to get that legislation through. So I think that there are efforts to try to get this on a more state level and not just on a single municipality. But I think that Nantucket's really been in the forefront of a lot of this with a couple of the other communities. And I think I really commend the trust in trying to lead this and the select board, because I think it's really important.
Thank you, Vicky. Any more questions, comments, thoughts? So we see the edits. Christy, can you describe to us the action item you're looking for? Well, before we jump to that, Judy, I haven't given you the mic at all. Judy, would you like the mic? A moment, the floor?
Only to point out that it was almost 2 years ago that I was conducting the interviews for you folks with folks who were potentially interested in this. So I've aged 2 years, and I just want to see this program go forward. And I really just want to encourage all of you to give yourselves the patience to evaluate how it goes, because you may want to make changes based on experience, and that's fine. I would keep the pilot as simple as you can. It's been my mantra with this all along. Just keep it simple, because you're probably going to want to change it. Every one of the programs we interviewed for a project we did for an organization on the Cape had changed their program design in one way or another based on experience. So have patience.
Thank you, Judy. Christy, to you.
Thank you, and a huge thank you to Judy for bearing with us for the past 2 years as we worked through this. So I would recommend a motion to approve the updated program guidelines and authorize staff to work with the finance department to begin accepting applications.
Great. Is there someone prepared to make that motion? Everybody's got
I'll
the
make
mics
that
on. Mary, your
motion.
mic's not. Thank you, Forrest. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Vote by roll call. Mary Mack,
Aye.
Forrest Bell,
Aye.
Penny Dye,
Aye.
Brooke Moore,
Aye.
Abby De Molina,
Aye.
Chantal Murphy. And Brian Sullivan's an aye. Brooke, did I miss a discussion? I'm sorry.
No, I want to ask just one question in terms of, have we thought about timing the public outreach on this vis-a-vis the date of opening? I think we need to have a fairly robust public outreach period to make it as fair as possible, so it isn't the person who caught it on social media this day that and then you know, and is this first come, first serve? I just didn't ask that question. I didn't notice whether that was, because that really drives what I'm thinking about, making sure that there's broad outreach so that it's fair.
Christy?
I was gonna have Judy answer that.
Okay.
So we had originally, way back when, talked about doing kind of an unveiling of the program as it was, finally going to be in its final form. And I just never did that because we weren't there, but that was part of the original scope. So if you want my help with that, I'm happy to do it. I'm happy to go in the background. I'll do whatever you want me to do. But we had originally talked about how do we sort of make sure everybody knows about this and understands how it's going to work and what a wonderful opportunity is. And, thank you town meeting and all these things that kind of need to be said.
Brooke?
If I may suggest, Christy, that you ask the chair of the select board if we can get this on an agenda, and ask the communications department to push out on social media that the program is going to be described and at the select board meeting, and the recording will be online and so on and so forth, because we do have actually pretty good viewership of select board meetings. So, and especially if we announce publicly in advance that this is coming, that would be really helpful.
Perfect. So through you, Chair Sullivan, I'm working with the communications department on a plan around launching this. I'll coordinate with Judy. I know we want to reach back out to the homeowners that had participated in the focus groups 2 years ago. And we'll make sure that a lot of the communication is around, is out there before we actually start to begin accepting applications. And to address Brooke's question around first come, first serve, the idea is that each one would be reviewed independently, and then we would be looking at the budget. So it's not necessarily just because you're the first one to approve. We want to look at things such as the structure of the house, making sure that there's approval from whether it's the bank or any other approvals that we need. The appraisal needs to come in if they're asking for a price that's I would say, close to the 20% maximum. So there's a few things that they would need to make sure that they're in compliance with, and all of that would be laid out it's all laid out in the application and in the finance review of what criteria they'd be reviewed on.
Excellent. Any more comments before we close this item? We got the vote recorded, Dylan. We're good. Great. We have John Carl McGrady. Do you have a question, Mr. McGrady?
Yeah, hi. I'm a reporter with the Current. I just wanted to ask, I'm trying to find the agenda packet for this meeting to see some of the stuff you guys were showing on screen. I know the agenda center is just totally a mess right now, so I get that. But right now, only the agenda itself is available, and I don't know if there's any way that I can find the packet, or if that's just not something that's available for this meeting. But if so, I'd really appreciate being directed to it.
Great. Can you send Dylan an email and he will circle back on that? Do you have his
Yes.
email address? Okay, Vicky? Oh, no, you're good. Okay, hold hand up. Christy, good. Sorry, I lost my place. Rooted renters, staff update, and new restriction. Okay, staff update discussion. Christy, back to
Okay,
you.
so in your packet, which I will make sure is posted online if it's not already, there's an update from staff on what's going on. We've started to incorporate this at the second meeting of every month to give a general overview. A lot of what's in this packet we've addressed today with a lot of motions made by Brooke and seconded by Abby. So just wanted to talk about a couple current initiatives that are going on. The staff has been working on a joint planning session, coordination around housing. So we had an initial kickoff with the board chairs of the select board, the planning board, and the Affordable Housing Trust, along with the staff, the support staff for those boards. Our decision is to move forward with hiring a facilitator for September, we're calling housing retreat, to align all the strategic housing goals between planning board, planning commission, a select board, and the Affordable Housing Trust. So Leslie Snell, Libby Gibson, and I are working on a scope to hire a facilitator for that session, and stay tuned for a date in September. Another directive for staff was to review the covenant program and to present that at a future meeting. So we met with both Housing Nantucket and the Nantucket Housing Authority to review the program. A lot of the challenges that were brought up at previous meetings have been addressed in a blog by Housing Nantucket on the covenant program, such as why don't we raise the income levels, or what about the resale value, or how do we create more of these? A lot of this is addressed in their blog post. And we've also invited them to attend a September meeting of the trust to get the word out to the community about the intent of this program. It's one of the tools in our toolbox, and making sure that we're not kind of over expanding this program instead of creating new ones. Last thing was mentioned earlier by Colin, that the New York Times did a piece that really told the stories of the housing challenges on Nantucket. We feel that it did a really great job of showcasing the challenges, but failed to really focus on the ongoing initiatives and the projects that are addressing this crisis. So town staff is working on kind of a letter to the editor to illustrate all the work that the housing office and the town is doing, and then a momentum that we're building. And the last thing was the year-round deed restriction pilot program is almost ready to launch. So with that, everything's in the packet. If there's any questions around current projects or initiatives, I'm happy to answer.
Penny?
Yeah, through you, Brian, to Christy, are you gonna, when you make your report to the select board, are you gonna have, as you have in the past, a deck that you can then distribute to us digitally?
Yes.
Okay, it would be super helpful to have that. I can think of a number of large groups that would like to, that we can send it to. Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yep.
I could also suggest maybe asking NCTV when you make your presentation to carve out that segment of the recording, so it can be distributed as a video as well as the packet.
It's a good idea.
It's a great idea. Excellent. Thumbs up. All right. So we will thank you for the update. And move on to board comments. Any board comments for items not on the agenda? Okay, seeing no reactions, I'll close board comments, move to other business. We have 2 meetings, Christy, on the agenda, one for August 5th and one for August 19th.
And to clarify, the August 5th will just be executive session.
Okay, great. All right. With that, I'll move down to, go ahead, Brooke.
Want the motion?
Okay, so, yes, I do. Item 13, executive session. I'm looking for a motion.
Okay, so I move that we close the open session, move to executive session, not to return to open session for the items as outlined in the executive session agenda.
Is there a
Second.
second? Thank you, Abby. By roll call, Mary Mac,
Aye.
Brooke Moore.
Aye.
Penny Dye,
I,
Horace Bell,
Aye.
Abby De Molina,
Aye.
Chantal Murphy,
Aye.
and Brian Sullivan's and I. Great. See you there. Thanks, everybody.